Hello, welcome to Sportsday. I'm Hugh Ferris. The headlines this evening: scheduling problems, slippery courts, and now the French Open has another problem. No more Novak Djokovic. The defending champion withdraws through injury. The rain is following England and Scotland's cricketers. Their opening match at the T20 World Cup has delivered a 6 and only just over 6 overs in Barbados. And maybe not mathematically a must-win, but England do need to kickstart their Euros qualifying campaign in France.
We always want to win games, and of course it would really help us to put us in a better position when we win the game.
Also coming up on Sports Day this evening, how climate change might impact rugby union, with Gloucester's home for more than a century and a quarter at most risk. Hello again, welcome along to Sports Day this evening. A list of problems facing this year's French Open has just got longer. Novak Djokovic has withdrawn from the tournament with a knee injury, ending his own defence of the title at Roland Garros. The world number one had been involved in the latest finish in French Open history, before then returning yesterday to deal not only with another marathon match, but also a slippery court, which Djokovic then claimed had contributed to an injury, which has now forced him to pull out.
If a player is feeling a certain way, and then, what else do we need to wait for that to happen? I mean, today I injured myself. Yes, I survived. I won the match. Great. But will I be able to play next one? I don't know. I don't know the severity of the injury, but could have this injury be prevented? Possibly, if there was just a little bit more of a frequent care of the court during the set. That's basically all I asked for.
Well, let's talk to our tennis correspondent, Russell Fuller, who, of course, is in Paris for us. And Russell, first of all, more details on that injury. We understand what Novak Djokovic thought about it yesterday, but what's happened since?
It's been described as a torn medial meniscus. It's a right knee problem. Now, we don't know the severity of that injury, but it's a huge concern for Novak Djokovic, with Wimbledon starting in just under 4 weeks' time and the Olympics beginning in just under 8. He is desperate to win an Olympic gold medal for the first time in his career, and both those events must have big question marks attached to them. It was a problem that he had, a mild problem, he said, with his right knee coming into the championships, but in his mind, it was very clearly aggravated by the courts yesterday. He was slipping and sliding more than even Djokovic normally does. And there was a point early in the second set when he slipped and he hurt that knee. Now it appears quite badly. So he's out of the tournament. He will not play Casper Ruud in the quarterfinals tomorrow. Casper Ruud gets a walkover to the semi-finals. There will be a first-time men's French Open champion crowned on Sunday. There'll be no 4th Roland Garros title, no 25th Grand Slam title for Djokovic, and Jannik Sinner becomes world number one for the first time on Monday.
Slippery courts, scheduling. There have been a number of problems that the French Open organisers have had to face. This probably the biggest one of them, partly, Russell, because they seem to be linked, all three of them.
Well, the slippery courts is something that Novak Djokovic made very, very clear his discussed about during the match against Francisco Cerundolo, his second consecutive 5-set match. He felt that the court had screwed his knee, to quote him on court yesterday. He wanted them to sweep the courts more regularly, every 4 games instead of at the end of the set, which is the convention. I think he's also got good reason to be unhappy about the scheduling, because an extra match was added to the Philippe Chatrier programme on Saturday to catch up with the rain, the problems caused by the rain delays. And as a result, his match that went 5 sets didn't finish until 7 minutes past 3 in the morning. So there have been some scheduling mistakes, no question about it. And Ons Jabeur is very unhappy with the fact that the women are always scheduled first on, where there's not the same atmosphere in the stadium, and the men get all the night session matches and actually get the bulk of the tea time matches, which is also a popular time for spectators on site and television viewers around the world.
And you mentioned Yannick Sinner becoming the world number one. He became the world number one whilst he was playing, so he didn't know about it until after he'd beaten Grigor Dimitrov.
No, pretty much the last person to find out that he was going to be world number one on Monday. But he did complete victory against Grigor Dimitrov in straight sets in the end. Actually dropped his serve when serving for the match. So you do wonder if he'd heard somehow. He got a whisper from around the court and it threw him off his stride. But he completed a straight sets victory by winning the tiebreak. And it was quite likely he'd take over as world number one anyway, because if he'd won the title, he would have been world number one. If Novak Djokovic had failed to get to the final, he would have been world number one. And you look at the way he's played since the back end of last year. He was the runner-up to Djokovic in the ATP finals. He won the Davis Cup with Italy. OK, so no ranking points actually awarded for that. Australian Open champion, very fast start to the year. And even though he had a problem with his hip and had to miss the Rome Masters, his home event, he's been super consistent on tour. And officially on Monday, he will be a new world number one, the first ever Italian to top the men's rankings.
Russell, really appreciate your time. Thank you very much indeed.
Thanks, you.
So the French Open has its first semi-finals of the year, but even that wasn't without controversy. Iga Swiatek is through, as is Coco Gauff, but as Russell was telling us there, the Americans' win over Ons Jabeur began at 11 a.m. local time, with very few there to watch, and it has brought more criticism of the scheduling at Roland Garros. Patrick Geary has more.
Paris rises slowly for a matinee, a crowd that did not quite match the occasion. Because Coco Gauff against Ons Jabeur guarantees entertainment, power and magic.
Oh, no way.
In the first set, Jabeur let her imagination fly. As a North African woman, she is seen as a symbol. As a player, she is an exclamation mark. For Gauff, that meant danger. Until in the third game of the second set, a jump start of a shot. So powerful it seemed to turn the match. Gauff broke, took the set and assumed control in the third. Even then, she could not fully switch Ons off. Jabeur wouldn't surrender in heart or head, original to the last. The problem, not every idea is a winner.
Oh, no!
Gauff, the third seed, marches into the semi-final, while Jabeur is out in every sense a little earlier than ideal.
I would have loved a quarter-final at night, not at 11 a.m. For me, it doesn't make sense. You achieve a quarter-final, you're happy. It's like, no, you play at 11, you know.
Marketa Vondrousova is, for another month or so at least, the Wimbledon champion. But today she walked into a whirlwind. Up against her, a particularly eager Swiatek, world number one, three-time French Open champion. She didn't drop a game in her last match, nor in the first set of this. 6-love. Vondrousova eventually managed 2 games, but Swiatek was too good. She looks a champion in waiting, with little need for patience. Patrick Geary, BBC News.
Now, they might be the defending champions, but England's path back to the Euros next year is becoming increasingly tricky. Their qualifying campaign has failed to get going and on Friday delivered a defeat to France to leave the Lionesses just third in their group. They're in Saint-Etienne to face the same opponents tonight, with the stakes rising for Serena Wiegman's side.
We always want to win games, and of course it would really help us to put us in a better position when we win the game. And of course that's how we're going to approach it. And we think with the experience we have on Friday, we feel comfortable that we can get a good result.
Well, let's speak to Joe Curry, who's alongside me in the studio. And Joe, Wiegman is having to answer more and more questions recently about the team's form.
Yes, tired, predictable, even boring were some of the words being bandied around following that Friday night defeat to France. England not looking as they have done in the last couple of years. And there are a few reasons behind that, simply because all teams in all sports peak and trough. They go through good phases and not so good phases. And the Lionesses, of course, when they won the Euros in 2022, reached the World Cup final last year, were certainly peaking. Right now, they seem to be troughing ever so slightly. People have talked about the fact that the team looked lethargic, which is fair. A lot of these players, off the back of the World Cup last summer, have gone into a very busy, very long domestic season, and they haven't had a decent break in a very long time. But you have to level that up because all European sides are pretty similar when it comes to that. And the other reason, of course, is are they coming predictable? We know that Serena Wiegman, when she has a fully fit squad, doesn't like to change her starting 11. She likes to make the same substitutions at the same sort of time. Our team's beginning to figure them out, particularly someone like Kira Walsh in the centre of the park. Teams are learning that if you mark her out of the game, then England's fluidity goes a little bit. So it'll be interesting to see if Wiegman, who says that, yes, they want to learn to be unpredictable but not lose their identity, whether she changes the starting 11 tonight very much at all and how she approaches the game.
Yeah, so that's the wider context. The immediate issue is, as we can see here, because that is the current table, there might be an imaginary, if you like, line between 2 and 3, because it is just 2 automatic qualification places for these teams in League A of the structure. But even below that line, there is a little bit of a safety net for England.
Yeah, so as you say, the top 2 go automatically through to the Euros and Switzerland next summer. The other 2 will then have to try and qualify through a playoff situation. It's important to say that between France, Sweden and England, right there, you've got 3 of the top 6 teams in the world. So whatever happens, one of those big 3 will not go through automatically. And there's no huge shame in that, simply because of the quality of the opposition. Many people have referred to this as the group of death. It means that England currently have a win, a draw and a defeat. Tonight is not what you'd call must win, but they certainly don't want to lose it either, because no one really wants to go through that playoff system.
Joe, thank you very much indeed. That's Joe Curry. Well, Scotland's position in their group is a whole lot healthier. They beat Israel 5-0 this afternoon, extending their lead at the top and indeed their unbeaten start to qualifying. Martha Thomas scored all but one of the goals. It is the Spurs striker's first hat-trick for Scotland in the game that was played behind closed doors in Budapest. Another first came from Chelsea Cornet's debut international goal that helped to round off the 5-0 win.
Another one off the line and it's crashed in.
England and Scotland's cricketers landed in the Caribbean hoping for better weather than they've had at home, and yet this has been the scene in Barbados as the 2 teams attempt to begin their T20 World Cup campaign. Now, Scotland won the toss and chose to bat first against the defending champions. After the first rain delay, they did make a solid start, with Michael Jones damaging England and indeed the stadium's solar panels. Then the heavens reopened, play was suspended with the score 51 without loss in just the 7th over. The 2 teams need to bat 5 overs each to get a result. Watching Sportsday, let's have a quick look at some of the other stories making the headlines today. And we'll stay at the T20 World Cup, where Afghanistan opened their campaign with a convincing 125-run win over Uganda in Guyana. They made 183 from their 20 overs. They then bowled Uganda out for just 58. Fazal Haq Faruqi took 5 for 9, with Rashid Khan also taking 2 further wickets. As a new leader of the Criterium du Dauphiné in France, young Canadian rider Derek Gee pulled away on the uphill finish to stage 3 to take a first professional victory, and the yellow jersey with it too. He said his first win in Europe was unbelievably special. And Sergio Perez has signed a new 2-year contract to stay at Red Bull until the end of the 2026 Formula One season. The Mexican has been Max Verstappen's teammate since joining the world champions 3 years ago. A new report commissioned by World Rugby has revealed climate change could put grounds like Gloucester's Kingsholm at risk of marine submersion in the future. More severe flooding and the effect of heat waves on players are among the issues that have been highlighted by a report that found the consequences of climate change on rugby are significant. Jamie Farndale is a Scotland Sevens player who is studying sustainability with Scottish Rugby.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Gloucester is one of the stadiums that's being highlighted as affected, but this report is far more wide-reaching than that. You know, it's a worldwide report. It looks at athletes and fans, the health and safety for myself as a rugby player, but it looks also at the impact of being able to run these events in the first place and the whole business of sport behind it. You know, if these events are cancelled far more regularly, you know, it becomes a real issue for the sport.
So what's the answer? If there is to be a place like Fiji, for example, who can't move, like perhaps a Premiership rugby club could, what is the best advice that you can give?
And what this report does, it looks at the impact of a 2-degree world and a 3-degree world of warming above pre-industrial levels. And to put that in context, we're already at over 1.5. The last 11 months have all been over 1.5 degrees of warming. So 2 degrees isn't far away. And what 2 degrees in this report comes out as is 60% of extra days above a temperature at which it's dangerous and potentially fatal to compete. And in 3 degrees, you know, some places that goes up to 30 days extra above which it's dangerous to compete. The answer for me isn't adaptation, and we're already seeing events that are changing dates or starting earlier in the day. We're seeing heat breaks and ice towels, but sport's got a much more urgent need to deal with this. And for me, it's about reducing its impact in terms of carbon, but also in terms of its impact on nature, and then utilizing its most valuable asset, which is global influence.
And you excel in the sevens form of the game. That is your chosen specialty. And that is, if you think about it, the most global element of rugby union because of the way that it tours around the world. So it is perhaps in that form of the game that adaptation would be felt the most, should it be the path that's followed.
Absolutely. There's already countries that we play in, Singapore, Australia, where the temperature is 35, 40 degrees. And I know from playing, you feel physically sick, you can't concentrate, you're just concentrating on catching the ball rather than, reading the game. And it's not the best form of the sport that's put across. And, I've had teammates that have struggled with heat illnesses. So there's a risk, there's a worse product of game. If we see, as I said, 10 extra days above this sort of dangerous temperature line at 2 degrees and even further at 3 degrees, it's unthinkable. The impact on sport is one thing, but the impact on the world is the other. And the message we want to get across is we're not just trying to learn how to adapt to 2-3 degrees. Every part of a degree that we can save here is massive, and sport has a huge role in influencing that.
Much more of that story on the BBC Sport website. Now, Paralympics GB are on the hunt for details of more than 2,000 people who have represented Great Britain and Northern Ireland since the Games began. Today, the organisation announced it wants to establish a community of former athletes to help them keep in touch and share their Paralympic memories. Matt Graveling has been finding out more.
The very first Paralympic Games were held in Rome in 1960. In the decades that followed, many people have represented their countries in the Winter and Summer Paralympics. I'm here at Paralympics GB's headquarters, where the organisation is trying to find anyone who has ever represented Great Britain or Northern Ireland.
Competing for GB is massive, and we should recognise everyone who competed for the Paralympic team. You spend so much time together. So, my last Games was Athens, and I might not see some of my teammates for years, but you meet each other again and you just drop back into where you were before because you've got that shared experience.
The Paralympic movement has grown massively in the last 64 years, and this isn't just about finding people, it's about recognising everybody who has played a part. Mike Brace took part in the very first Winter Paralympic Games in 1976.
Two friends of mine and myself, we went and trialled for the Games down at Aldershot on a plastic cross-country ski track and got selected. And so we then became the first blind competitors representing Britain in the Paralympic Games.
Mike, tell me a little bit about this suit, because there's no way you haven't put this on again since 1976. When did you last wear it?
I last wore it this year in March over in Norway at my last competitive event.
Does this still fit, Mike?
It stretches a bit. I noticed that bits of it aren't in quite the right place. This new initiative for me is going to be fantastic because it will allow all of those past contacts to suddenly have that camaraderie and friendship and a memory almost of the Games spirit.
So if you have pictures like this in your photo album, Paralympics GB want to hear from you. And all athletes will also receive a token to recognise their involvement in the Games.
And even if some Paralympians have unfortunately passed away, we still want to connect with the families as well, because we just recognise that every Paralympian had a part to play in the story of Paralympics GB and the Paralympic movement.
We are now less than 3 months away from the Paralympics in Paris, where hopefully the teams will be winning a few more of these. All athletes from now going forward will be automatically added to this database, but if you or a loved one competed in the previous Games and wants to get involved, head to paralympics.org.uk.
Now, they might be amateur athletes, but those in the British outrigger teams are training 9 times a week as they prepare for the World Championships in Hawaii this August. Described as the oldest water sport in the world, outrigging is a form of canoeing. It started with people travelling between Polynesian islands like Hawaii. It's now a global sport with professional squads, but the British team, they're self-funded. And James Dunn went to meet some of them as they trained in Sussex.
It's a small Sussex club embracing a sport steeped in Polynesian history, and it's riding a new wave of worldwide popularity.
It's the oldest water sport in the world, really. It's kind of how the Polynesians track from one island to the other, and it's now, there's world championships, there's clubs all around the world. The canoes are built out of carbon.
It's attracted athletes from a range of sporting backgrounds, including former London Irish rugby player Wes Horscroft.
We've got a pro surfer in the team, a national 800-metre runner. I've always wanted a water sport that gave me what rugby gave me. You know, the working for each other, and in the boat of six, the harder I work, the more the team benefit.
Originating in the Polynesian islands, everything about the sport harks back to its heritage, including the language. There's an armour on the side of the canoe needed to stabilise the boats, once made from hollowed-out tree trunks. In these, you don't capsize, you huli, the Hawaiian word for turn.
If your head doesn't come to the surface, I'm going to dive down and dig you out. All right?
In these six-man teams, alternate seats paddle on alternate sides, and the person in the middle seat tells everyone when to change.
Done about 200 metres so far. My shoulders are absolutely screaming, and you find yourself just begging to hear that sound from the front of the boat, which means that you can finally change side.
The World Championships came to London in 2022. Last year, it was Samoa. In Hawaii this summer, GB will face island nations like Tahiti, where outriggers are sporting superstars, and they'll have to train accordingly.
First thing happens when we went to trial, they bring in a former Olympian. It's an old boy in his 80s. Tells you you're expected to train 9 times a week on top of work and life and family life and everything else. And it actually tells you that the committee have set it to 9 times a week, but he would have made it 11.
Come January, we all dedicate, a lot of time to training. And well, hopefully we're going to do all right. Come back with some silverware.
The competition in Hawaii will be fierce, but the mood here is buoyant. Maybe they can sail away with a medal. James Dunn, BBC News, Shoreham by Sea.
Yeah, those pictures as wet as the scene in Barbados today. It's one of 2 T20 World Cup matches involving England and Scotland. The other one, incidentally, is in Texas. The Netherlands chasing 107 to beat Nepal, but they are apparently mopping up in Barbados, which might mean a resumption. They need to play 5 overs. If there is only 5 overs for England, that will be 66 that they chase to try and beat Scotland. Another unsatisfactory ending is at the French Open, where Novak Djokovic has withdrawn. The defending champion has a knee injury. He had a scan, blamed the slippery Roland Garros clay courts, and now he is out. Casper Ruud goes through in his place. Much more on our website, but that's it from Sportsday. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye for now.